Hello, how y'all doing? This is the video that I promised that I would post for you, uh, going into a little more detail about the unit gloss assignment, the different elements of it, not just sort of the technical requirements, but what I'm looking for, what do I expect as far as content, uh, and also give you a quick run through with the rubric, so you'll be able to look at that and get a sense of what or how you're going to be graded on this. I know this is a big assignment. It's a complex one. There are a lot of different parts and elements to it. So I want to do my best to try and explain it here. But if there's anything that's confusing you about it, either ask me in class, drop in during my office hours, or shoot me an email, and I'll do my best to go ahead and explain that. Um, if you would right now, again, get on D2L, get on the course webpage, open up the content menu, go down to the section for Unit 1, right? And then the subsection, Unit Gloss Materials, and then open up the assignment and instructions, okay? And at the same time, go open up in Microsoft Word, the unit gloss template that I put together for you. You could open up already in the form you've been uploading some of our practice glosses in. So you can take a quick look at and remind yourself how that's set up. So when you've done that, I'm going to first go through the unit gloss assignment. I'll also make a few references back to the template and what you can see in that. And then when I'm done with that stage of it, at the end I'll go back to the rubric and just show you real quickly what's going on there. All right, assuming that you've got it open already, actually flip over first to the template. Right? Open that up and take a look at the top. You'll see up there the table of individual assignments. Right? Now, this references the right-hand comment bubbles, the document connections, what I also term in the assignment the theoretical background comments, what we've been doing in the practice glosses. Okay. You think about it, for this gloss assignment, you have 6 weeks worth of reading, right? You have the first 2 weeks, turn that up, 2, of sort of theoretical background stuff, political theory in ancient Europe, political theory in early modern Europe. Then you have, for the unit itself, 4 weeks of reading. 4 weeks of reading. Now, the idea of the assignment is, as you look through the whole thing, is that you have a large number of group responsibilities. Okay, a lot of this whole gloss is a group grade, but you also have some individual responsibilities, and those go directly to those theoretical background comments, those document connections that you're doing in the right-hand comment bubbles. Okay. Now, the way to divide those, is that I've been aiming at groups of 4. Okay, I've got a few that don't quite match up, and I'll deal with that in just a moment here. But if you got the group of 4, each of you should take one of the 4 weeks from the unit. Okay, one of the 4 weeks from the unit. The 2 weeks of theoretical background documents, okay, those connection comments are a group responsibility. Okay, everybody needs to make sure that they get done and they go into the group grade. Okay, they go into the group grade. Now, understand then that each of you should have 1 week's worth of documents to do connecting comments on. Okay. Now, you probably gathered, based on the practice glosses we've done, several of you have a little bit of a head start. Okay? And you can certainly use those comments. I would suggest you revise and so on, but do make sure that they show up under your name. Okay, make sure that you've done them and they show up in the comment bubbles as you having done it. So I can make sure to make those connections. But decide amongst yourselves who's going to get which week, okay, and enter each person's name in the appropriate box by that week. Now, I know there are some groups that things are a little shifting. I think I've got one group with 5. I've got a couple with 3. If you have one extra member, I think that one group that has 5 people in it, the week 2, okay, theoretical background reading, political theory in early modern Europe. One of you take that week's reading as an individual assignment. Okay, one of you take that week's reading. If you are down a group member, if you only have 3, okay, then take that extra week, that week that isn't accounted for individually, and treat it as a group responsibility. Okay, I understand that that does leave the 3-person groups a little bit uneven. I will take that into account when I put together the groups for the next unit, which I will be doing this weekend, so we'll be ready on Tuesday. All right, so keep that in mind. Okay, I'm not going to overload you across the whole semester, but okay, that's how to distribute those things. Okay? As I said, you can use glossed material that you've done for the practice glosses, but remember, it'll be your responsibility now for this assignment, and you need to make sure that it's coming up under your name so I know that you did it. Right? But that's how the individual assignments work. Now, next step, switch back to the assignment that you've called up in D2L. The contextual introduction. Now, part of putting the Navajo Treaty into historical context, and part of glossing it, is explaining some of the immediate historical context around its composition. And that means, as you see, I want you to provide a good, strong paragraph, as it's explained there, talking about the immediate sort of context of the creation of the treaty, the Navajo War, the Long Walk, right? The reservation of sorts at Bosque Redondo, okay? And provide relevant biographical background to the major men involved in forming the treaty. Obviously, the U.S. commissioners, William Tecumseh Sherman and Samuel F. Tappan. And also you can find, if you look around, some biographical detail of some of the Navajo elders, the big 2 who have left some historical records are Barboncito and Manuelito. All right. And keep in mind, though, of course, relevant historical details. I don't need a long description of William Tecumseh Sherman's military service during the Civil War. Okay? Focus in on his involvement in the military in the West. Right? What authority he had, what he was doing there. Okay. And again, that's I don't need a whole detailed life, right? For Samuel Tappan, particularly, how did he get involved in Native American Indian affairs through the U.S. government and other agencies? How did he wind up on the council ground at Bosque Redondo? Okay. Now, as I explained there, I expect you to do some outside research, that will be properly cited. Okay, at the bottom of your paragraph, there should be a bibliography in Chicago Manual of Style form, and you can find references to proper Chicago form, citation form, through the MTSU library. Okay. Now, if you look at the materials that I provided, some of the videos, a few of the websites, I've given you a few places that you can look. There are other places outside that you should research as well. And that particularly, for instance, be about some of that biographical background of the men involved in authoring, drafting this treaty. Okay. Again, this is a group responsibility. Yeah, obviously, one of you is going to write it, but everybody needs to be responsible for assembling the material, getting it put in there. This is this one general thing. I know there's a temptation with projects like this to sort of divide it up. Okay, be careful about dividing it up. Remember that everybody in the group is responsible for a lot of these different things, and they're not all equal in terms of the nature of the work involved or the amount of the work involved. Okay. But that's what the contextual introduction should be. And again, look at the assignment for the precise way I want it formatted, typeface and color and so on. All right. Second element, footnotes. Okay, the footnotes in this project are referencing historical details. Okay, this is one of the things that you're going to find in these documents. Okay? Because they were written at the time, written by people intimately involved in the events, okay, they are going to be making references either directly or obliquely to historical events, right, that may seem a little opaque or just confusing to us from the outside. Particularly for instance, when you get to this, Unit 2 gloss, which is on the New York draft riots. The two men who were writing letters to the editor of the New York Times are constantly referencing New York politicians and past legislative debates and so on. There may not be quite as much of that with this treaty here, but it's still going to show up. Still going to show up. And so you need to go through, look at some of these references, okay? What was Bosque Redondo, and so on. And when you come across one of those, do, again, the outside research, cite, if appropriate, and put that information in a footnote, right? Historical references. Right? And again, these may be references, taking different forms. Right? It may just be kind of something oblique or unclear, or it may just be a name, a place, okay, an event, something like that. Okay? The little details, for instance, today, if I were writing a document about American politics, okay, in the 2020 election, I could throw out terms like Biden, Trump, okay, Harris, and so on. And all of you, okay, everybody at the time, i.e. right now, would understand what I was talking about. When I talked about, the invasion of the Capitol building, okay, I might just put it that way, okay, or quote unquote, what's the other term, the MAGA riot, as it's sometimes called, writing for you or other people, or other Americans at the time, I might just throw it in that way. Somebody coming, 100, 200, 300 years later, reading over the text I wrote, they're going to be, the what? The huh? Huh? Who? Huh? Okay. Establishing what those little references are is part of glossing this text and putting it in proper historical context. Okay. So that's the footnotes, the second part of it. Okay. And you know how to insert and format a footnote. That isn't anything complex. The third element is, yeah, a glossary. People back in the old days, they talked funny. Okay? They used words that we don't use today, or they use words in sort of antiquated ways, obsolete, as the Oxford English Dictionary puts them, or ways that are particularly tied to the context and the nature of the document. As particularly relevant, say, to the Navajo Treaty here, which was a treaty, a law, a legal document. And so there's a fair amount of sort of legalese that's put in there. There are also some things, and again, this was a document not just created by and for the United States government, it also involved the Navajo. Right? And if you look through it, there's plenty of terminology that seems to be an attempt to translate Navajo, Native American concepts into English. Okay, one I've pointed out a couple of times. If you look at referencing bad men amongst the Indians, or bad men amongst the whites. Well, what did that mean? Bad men. That seems rather strange. But again, that's an attempt to sort of phrase things in a sense that the Navajo could fit them into their worldview. Remember, this was a society without a formal government and a written legal code and a regular judicial procedure. So the notion of a criminal, how exactly do you fit criminal into the Navajo context? A group of people who dealt with things a lot of times through arbitration by elders, or still the law of vengeance. Okay, that's where you get this bad men. Okay, so look through the document. Okay, find these words that okay, but what does that mean? Right? That does, or maybe I think I know what it means. I see it used today, but in the immediate context of the sentence, the clause, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Okay, do your research then. Yeah, the Oxford English Dictionary is your tool here. Okay, go through historical, maybe obsolete uses of some of this terminology to find ways in which, or definitions of the word that seem to make better sense in context. But remember, I do not want to see the glossary turn into a cut and paste job. Don't go to dictionary.com and cut and paste definitions from there. That's not historical. And by the same token, don't just go to the OED and cut and paste those historical, obsolete definitions of the term. You can use them, but put things in your own words. And as the assignment explains, okay, I want the term defined in the context of the document itself. Right? The word, the phrase, what does it mean? What did it mean? Okay, within the document. Okay, within the text. How was it advancing the argument, in a sense? All right? How was it advancing the argument? What did it mean in the context of the sentence? What did it mean in the paragraph? The whole document. Okay? Define it historically and define it in the context of that document. Now, again, the assignment down there explains the ways. I want you to format that, highlight the word, put it in bold, and do the internal links within the document down to a glossary which you are going to put at the bottom. And again, what you'll just put down at the bottom, just say glossary, the word or phrase, and then your historical contextual definition afterwards. And just where you put the word down in the glossary, okay, make sure you've got that internal, the bookmark and the internal link up to the word in the main text of the document. So I can do the little things as Control-click, and it can get me down from the document. down to your glossary entry. Right? As I said, this is a bit of research involved. Right? I'm not looking, as I said, for the right definition. This is a history class. Okay? The definition in historical context. Okay? Use the OED, Oxford English Dictionary, as a resource, okay, for research, but not as the final authority. It can give you some clues, but you need to define it yourself. Define it yourself and explain what it meant within the Navajo Treaty. Right? That's the glossary. And if you're wondering about numbers and everything else, remember, I'll get to that when I talk about the rubric here at the end of this video. The next part, if you're looking at, excuse me, if you're looking at the unit gloss assignment, the theoretical background comments. I've already sort of explained those. You've already worked through those in the practice glosses, right? You want to explain the deeper historical background, okay? Intellectual, social, okay? Theoretical, political, to what was going on in the treaty. And we talked about, where do you see the ideas of other authors appearing in the argument, a sense, of the treaty itself. And that's what those comments are. Remember, there are going to be sort of two groups to them. As far as the group project goes, remember, it's the 2 weeks of theoretical background readings. That'll be a group responsibility, remember. Okay, the grade, whatever, again, if you divide it up, whatever that person does, everybody else is going to stand or fall on that. So I would suggest group responsibility and group review. And then, of course, the other sections are the individual responsibilities for different weeks of it will also show up there. Don't worry about space. Microsoft Word will shrink things when you get too much, and honestly, when you start looking at the numbers that are expected, that's what it should be. It should be just a long list of all these kind of shrunken, minimized comment bubbles, okay, page after page of them. Pay attention to the formatting. Okay, make sure, as I said, for your individual weeks responsibilities that they are popping up under your name, and make sure that the document you are referencing, okay, the other text within the course, a short title is included in there in all caps. Okay, this is for me, so I can make a quick reference. I click it open. Okay. You're referencing Dionysius of Halicarnassus. Okay, all right, now I see what you're doing. Okay. But remember, make sure that the title of the document you're referencing is in all caps in the text of your comment. Right? And I think, as explained, you can load additional comments onto specific sections. You can put in replies to other people's comments, or you can just double and triple up, and then that's perfectly fine. Okay, there are sections in the treaty where you should be referencing 4 or 5 other documents. Okay, because there's a lot of ideas going into it. All right, but again, hopefully at this point I shouldn't have to explain too much of what I expect out of those. You've already been practicing on them. Look at the comments that I'm going to offer on the practice glosses that I'll be grading this weekend, and you'll be able to see some of my suggestions and commentary on that. Then the main ideas. Okay, this is what goes in that sort of light blue shaded column over on the left hand side of the document. Right? And remember, note the formatting that I'm looking for. Okay, that you're going to put this in sort of dark red, type this up in there, and you're going to, again, do the little internal links, the bookmark, and so on back and forth between, A, B, C, D, and portions of the document. Okay, you're not referencing here any of the background readings. You're not particularly going after, some of the smaller ideas and some of the smaller moving parts to the ideas. Instead, what I'm asking you to do here is sort of explain the overall argument of the Navajo Treaty and where different sections and paragraphs fit into that argument. Now, what I don't want you to do, okay, and this is sometimes something that students struggle with, is just in those main idea glosses, you give me a summary of the paragraph. Okay, don't just say, oh, well, in this paragraph, the treaty covered this issue and said this and that. Yeah, I know that. I can read the treaty. Okay, what I want to see is that you are thinking at a deeper level. Okay? One of the ways to consider it is look, for instance, at one of the closer parallels to the Navajo Treaty, which was Thomas Jefferson's letter to William Henry Harrison from back in 1803. Okay? In that, remember, he's got a lot of little details, about domestic manufacturing and land sales and trade policy and so on. But when you step back from that text, you should also see a bigger picture. Okay? What Jefferson was outlining was a whole policy that he wanted to see the American Republic pursue toward Native Americans. Yeah, it had a lot to do with big ideas like citizenship, assimilation, civilization, and so on. And when you go to the little individual things, okay, trade goods and debt, ask yourself, when you're looking at that document, well, where does this issue fit into, okay, this whole notion of civility and assimilation? Okay, remember the sort of group assignment question I asked you. When you read that text of that letter, what did Jefferson think an American was? Okay, that's kind of the deeper, big ideas of a document. This is the sense to go looking at the Navajo Treaty. Okay, yeah, you've got all these little details laid out in different sections and clauses of the treaty. Okay, U.S. government's going to do this, and the Navajo are going to do that, and so on and so forth. Take the whole treaty, okay, as a policy, a process, indeed an argument about who the Navajo were, who the American Republic was, okay, how the two should relate to one another, okay, what the past had been, what the future should be, okay, and then when you go to these main idea glosses, go to each paragraph, not to, as I said, just summarize, sort of restate what's in there, but rather explain, okay, how that clause advances that argument, okay, advances the purpose of this. For instance, those clauses about bad men, right? And the whole criminal proceeding. That's the point to explain, well, the United States and the Navajo had different understandings of criminality, disruptive behavior, that it had been a serious problem in the past and they wanted to deal with it. However, the United States government was insisting, okay, that the Navajo must, in time, move up to American standards of civility, i.e. regular written law codes, court procedures, and so on. Therefore, while the U.S. government guaranteed that bad men among the whites would be tried, also bad men amongst the Indians would not be, dealt with internally by the Navajo, but rather turned over to the United States, who would then try this person or these people in regular American courts. Okay, that's a sense that I want you to be explaining the background here. As I said, a big pothole to avoid here is just falling into summarizing it, just rephrasing what the paragraph said. Explain to me how the paragraph connected to the big ideas of the Navajo Treaty. As I said, who were Native Americans? Who were Americans? Okay. What was their past, their present, their future? What did they want this to be? How did those concepts like civility, barbarism, the laws of war, faction, commonwealth, how did those fit in there? And then in each paragraph, all right, I see the details, the niggly policy stuff of what's going on here, but how did this connect to how the Navajo Treaty and the whole reservation policy was trying to answer those big, big questions about relations between the United States and Native peoples. Okay, that's what goes in the main idea glosses. There doesn't need to be any footnotes, any outside research. There doesn't need to be any referencing to specific other documents that you've read for this text. Okay, this is interpretive and analytical. Okay, this is the big picture. It's sort of thing in kind of the old biblical glosses. Okay, one of the big things was to sort of explain the theology. Right, the biblical glossers they viewed Christianity as a whole system of thought. Okay, a cosmology. Okay, a history of the universe, the nature of God, nature of God's relation to humanity. Okay, what Christian theology was, what the church was, on, and then glossing how each little section, okay, what part, each little story within Scripture, each admonition in the letters of Paul, fit into that big, complex, holistic worldview. The reservation system, as you can sort of see it established across the 19th century and particularly embodied in the Navajo Treaty, this was a big, complex thing, okay, policy designed to answer those big questions. Okay, how did each element of that treaty contribute to the overall policy and the overall ideas behind the policy? That's what I want in those main idea glosses. Okay, it's not documentary connections and it's not summary. Okay. Now, go back here to D2L, and if back out of the stuff, or actually just go up to the menu there, see where it says assessments. Click on that and go down to rubrics. Okay. Click on rubrics, right? And it should bring up a number of different rubrics connected to the unit gloss assignment. Okay, in particular, there's a rubric for each sort of big subsection. So, for instance, you can click on the rubric right now for the contextual introduction. I'm going to do that myself, so if it doesn't look like I'm focusing on the camera, that's why. Okay. He comes down here and you see Unit Document Gloss Contextual Introduction. You click on that. Okay. What will come up is a number of different sort of subsections and levels to it. Right? This is sort of what I'm looking for. This can be, a checklist for you. And sort of, okay, make sure that I'm doing the different tasks here. As you see over then in the left-hand column, provides relevant biographical details about the authors of the document. Okay, then it shows the possible points there. All right, explains the nature and composition of the document. Uses and properly cites reputable outside research sources in a bibliography. Okay, that's what I explained there. And finally, is clearly and grammatically written. Okay. It'll give you an idea. Obviously, you see the different weights that these things have, um, and how I'm going to put together and grade that. And usually with rubrics, I'm just going to go through and click on a different level, and you'll get an idea of my assessment of your performance there. Okay, and if you go back, of course, then you can see rubrics for the other sections. The glossary going down, the footnotes, the political theory, actually in ancient Europe and early modern Europe, the unit document glosses as are the individual ones, okay, and then the main ideas glosses. And if you're looking through, different elements of the assignment, just go to assessments, rubrics, and click on the rubric for the individual section, and you'll get a sense of my expectations and how the grades are weighted. Okay, looking it over here. One thing, again, just about the rubrics themselves. I know coming out of high school, you're looking at numbers, and particularly when it comes to the footnotes, the glossary entries. And yes, I do have numbers in there. Okay. Now, remember though, if you're reading through the expectations, I'm not just grading on numbers. Okay. There's also an expectation of quality to your entries, okay? And also an expectation of coverage. Okay. For instance, in the glossary, if you're getting up to the max numbers, if you do the first half of the Navajo Treaty with a bunch of different terms defined, and then you stop because you've hit the number, hit the minimum threshold for top marks, yeah, you're going to get graded off for that because you didn't do the second half of the document. You should, if you're talking about the individual week that you have, you should be doing gloss references, those comment bubbles, for every author for your week. Okay, now there are going to be some shifts in emphasis, obviously. There's going to be a fair amount of Hugo Grotius. Right? And others might not get quite as much, but you should, if I go through and I see, well, you did, out of 6 authors, you did 4, but you never referenced 2, yeah, you're going to get some points and some scores docked. So remember, don't get overly focused on, oh yeah, I hit the numbers. Okay, I hit the benchmarks on the numbers, so I'm good. I'm also looking for quality of analysis and complete coverage. Okay, I'm looking things over on my notes here, and I think I have covered everything I want to. Remember, if you have additional questions about what's going on, you got 3 ways to ask. Ask me in class, and I'll give you an opportunity during class both days next week on Tuesday and Thursday. Drop into my office hours. What I'll probably try and do, because I know you've been getting things done on Monday, I'll probably try and hold a little additional office hours next weekend, and I'll post and announce when those will be. I'll have to check and see what my schedule is. It's March. My kids play basketball, so there's stuff coming up. But I'll work that out, and as you're sort of working across that weekend to finish things up, you can drop into those Zoom office hours and ask me questions. And of course, as I said, you've also got email as a way to get in touch with me. Again, if you're coming down to it, on Saturday and Sunday, the best option, first and foremost, is go for the Zoom office hours that I'll be setting up. All right, that's all I've got for now. I will see you in class on Tuesday, and good luck working on this.